So very interesting. All right, let's move to quarterback. The Niners have Brock Purdy. He's their one. They have Josh Dobbs. He's the two. They have Brandon Allen. He's the three. And then they have had a really good eye for quarterbacks the last couple of years. A couple of years ago, they got Brock. This year, they signed Tanner Mordecai from Wisconsin. And when I first saw the name, I didn't bat an eye. I didn't really think anything of it. I just thought, I watched Tanner Mordecai a little bit in college, but not a lot. I never really studied him, his traits, or I didn't know his story. Baller. The more I started watching Tanner Mordecai, the more I started seeing why they like Tanner Mordecai. He runs 4.46. He's got a strong arm. He's smart. He's competitive. He's mentally mature. He's been in 3 different offenses the last few years. He had like 39 touchdowns and 10 picks a year ago. He had like 32 touchdowns and 12 picks the year before that. So, I mean, he put up big numbers at SMU. He had 9 touchdowns in a game against Houston. He had 7 touchdown passes in his first game against Abilene Christian. Mordecai has a little bit. I mean, I was talking to Todd Husak about him. Husak thinks he's got some work on his motion that's a little bit of a loop.
Yeah, I see that.
When I watch the kid, I'm like, he's a lot of what you're looking for. The ball comes out on time. He throws the short and intermediate stuff. He's a great game manager. He's got 4.46 speed. And when he takes off to run, he's pretty courageous. He's running in the middle of the field. He's making guys miss. He's got a bigger arm than Brock. He doesn't have quite the accuracy, but in a short and intermediate range, he seemed plenty accurate. He completed 67% of his passes. They say he's a film junkie. I watched a couple of the interviews that he did this year. He reminds me a lot of Brock. He's this kind of mentally mature, very like humble, but very confident. He's 6'2", about 215. So he's about kind of the same size in that 215, 220 range. He might be a half inch taller than Brock. But the 4.46 speed, he's an athlete. And this guy had a 53-yard touchdown run. You can tell, a couple of the people that I saw talking about him said he's an authentic leader. And that's kind of what Brock is. He's an authentic leader. So I don't know, man. I mean, I'm not saying that Tanner Mordecai is, I would term it at this. I would phrase it this way. If it comes right down to, is he something or is he nothing? I'd put my name to it that he's something. He's not nothing. And I don't know about you, but I'm not a Dobbs guy. And I'm not a Brandon Allen guy. Now, I like Brandon Allen. He's smart. But I don't think Brandon Allen's special by any stretch. I think he's just kind of a guy. And nothing against Brandon. I just don't think he's awesome. I think he's lacking in arm strength and foot speed. And he's just kind of okay, right? I don't think. And Dobbs, I mean, anybody who watched Dobbs in that Vikings-Bears Monday night game late in the year, I mean, he was total horseshit in that game. He was terrible.
I got to jump in, though, Lair.
He threw 3 picks. He could have thrown 5.
How long was he studying that playbook, though? Like, he had literally just got traded there. I'm of the proponent.
It wasn't the first week, or I think it might have been the second or third week he was there. But I hear what you're saying, though.
You need at least a month to understand the playbook, get the chemistry down with your wide receivers. Dobbs had none of that. So I want to throw
Do you like Dobbs?
Caveat. I think Dobbs is a solid backup. Like when
he looked good against the Niners early in the year.
I was at that game too, so maybe that's kind of lingering.
He did. He looked really good against Dallas the week prior to the Niners.
Dobbs is a guy. I mean, can we get him with the same team, like for a training camp, for a whole season? And I think that's what's going to happen here with the Niners. He was on 3 different teams last year. This guy, he was bouncing around, learning new systems. I think Dobbs, he's a smart guy. I think he's going to pick up this offense. And I think he's a solid backup to Brock Purdy. That being said, getting back to Tanner Mordecai.
Better or worse than Darnold?
I think it's about even. Like, I think those guys are they're in the same tier. in my opinion. Like they're backup quarterbacks, and now Darnold might get a starting shot with the Vikings, while they get the rookie up to speed. But they're both backups. They're in that same tier of solid to good backup quarterbacks, in my opinion. So I think those are pretty close. But getting back to Mordecai, well, when I saw we signed him as an undrafted free agent, I'm like, this is a name I feel like I've heard for the last 6 years, because we have heard Tanner Mordecai for the last 6 years.
Yeah.
And you mentioned it. This dude had some extremely productive years with SMU, 39 touchdowns. I mean, he was when we were watching that Danny Gray film, that Rashee Rice film, it was Tanner Mordecai was the one slinging him the rock. So we've seen Mordecai. He's got some tools. Like when I was watching him, it's almost, I mean, he's not Baker Mayfield, but just with the size and kind of with the strong arm and, some mobility, he's quicker than Baker. But I was like, man, this guy kind of reminds me of Baker a little bit. But yeah, I think he should be able to challenge Brandon Allen for the QB3 spot. You mentioned it. He's got some mobility. He's got a pretty strong arm. I do see kind of a longer release. But that being said, as an undrafted guy, I'm on board with the signing.
Yeah, I was impressed. Now I didn't have any preconceived notions about the guy. But if you go read his story, he goes to Oklahoma. First of all, in high school, he's a 4-star recruit. So it wasn't like it was like just some bum. I mean, this guy was a highly recruited guy. And it wasn't like he played in a major metro area. He's born in Waco. He went to Midway High School in Waco, but he was a 4-star high school recruit. Who's getting all the best quarterbacks in recent years out of high school? Oklahoma. And sure enough, Oklahoma landed him. He lost the job the first year to Kyler Murray. No shame in that. Second year, he competed with Jalen Hurts, and Hurts beat him out. He was the backup to Hurts in 2019. Third year, he wound up sharing the job with Spencer Rattler. He only actually played in 12 games at Oklahoma. So he transfers in 2021 to SMU and lights it up. As I said, I mean, the numbers are unbelievable. 32 touchdowns, 10 picks, 39 touchdowns, 12 picks. So he had 2 years back-to-back combined where we're talking about 70 touchdowns and 71 touchdowns and 22 picks in a two-year run. It's pretty damn good. So then he goes to Wisconsin, and he didn't play great for Wisconsin. It's a tougher conference as far as defense. But he had 9 touchdowns, 4 picks for Wisconsin. In the Iowa game, which was, I think, towards the back end of the year, he breaks his right hand, his throwing hand. And I think it was Luke Fickell said, what I loved about this kid is there was never any doubt whether or not he was going to play against LSU in the bowl game. He was like, hell yeah, I'm playing against LSU in the bowl game. What did he do in the bowl game? He completed 68% of his passes for 378 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no picks. They wound up losing like 35-31 in a shootout to a much better LSU team. But that's a pretty damn good LSU team that had all kinds of guys that were drafted. And this guy lit it up 5 weeks after he broke his throwing hand. He played in that game. The guy's got a strong arm. One of the reports I read said he has a cannon, but didn't get invited to the combine. But then when you watch the film, all those passes that the Niners kind of utilize, I mean, he was throwing those with accuracy. The ball got out quickly. And then he was displaying that 4.46 speed. There's the kid clearly plays with confidence and he's accurate. He plays with toughness. He played hurt. He's like a fiery competitor. There's several examples where his team scores a touchdown. He's pumping his fist and he's running into the end zone. I mean, and he's got 4.46 speed. How many quarterbacks? That's like 90th percentile. I believe there's only one quarterback all year that ran better than 4.46 at the combine. So I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I'll say that the skill set is intriguing. Let's just say that. I don't know if he's
going to get a
good.
Look at him here next week, huh? Rookie minicamp.
Yeah, this week. I think Friday, Saturday they're on the field. So I'll tell you what I see. But I mean, I'm I went from who the hell's Tanner Mordecai to, you know what? I could see Tanner Mordecai beating out Brandon Allen for that third spot. Now he's going to have to be damn good because Brandon Allen was a backup to Burrow. He's, been in the Super Bowl. I mean, he's, you know what I mean? He's very
He's got
dependable.
NFL experience. He's started
Yeah.
games in the NFL. Yeah.
He started games. He's really smart. He's just, Mordecai will have to be better than Brandon Allen. And even then, they may try to slip him through waivers. But I'll tell you, if this guy, after Purdy, if this guy looks really good in the preseason and looks good in camp, I think he wouldn't clear waivers. I think somebody would hawk the Niners and be like, hey, they got a pretty good eye for things. And I'd love to, here's the other thing. It's kind of come out that Steve Slowick, who's Bobby Slowick's brother, and Brian Greasy were the two guys that really pounded the table for Brock Purdy. And to the Lynch said that with somebody earlier this week, said, once Brian Greasy had the conviction in him, that really convinced him and Shanahan to take a harder look at Purdy. And obviously, even though they love Greasy, they didn't take Purdy till the last round. But I wonder if Greasy pounded the table for Mordecai. I'll say this: if Mordecai is a good prospect, and the Niners got him as an undrafted free agent a couple years after they got Brock Purdy, and the key factor is Brian Greasy, like these guys. As far as I'm concerned, Brian Greasy could be a made man. You know what I mean? He could write his ticket for as long as he wants to stay. If he's got the kind of evaluation ability where he could see the greatness in Purdy before others and could maybe see the talent in Mordecai before others, and they both pan out as legit, that's a pretty good little feather in your cap if you're Greasy. I mean, having an Harbaugh was viewed as the quarterback whisperer. And I don't know if that actually was the case, but after he, had Andrew Luck and turned Alex Smith into a good player, I can see why people said that. But if Greasy really does, if he was a key factor in identifying Purdy, and we know what Purdy is, and if he's the key factor in identifying Mordecai, and Mordecai looks good this summer, man, Greasy might be, worth keeping around just for that alone.
Yeah, he's turning into the czar of QB scouts.
Well, I mean, the hardest thing to scout in the NFL is the quarterback. Hardest thing by far is the quarterback.
And it is. I agree with that, Larry, because you're talking to the guy who I was in on Zach Wilson. I thought Baker was going to be a stud. So the quarterback, that's the one position I'm still, your evaluation process is fluid, right? You gotta learn year in and year out. So you tweak it, but the QB position's hard to scout. Zach Wilson was the second pick of the draft because they thought he was going to be a stud. And these GMs are making millions.
Yeah.
It ain't easy.
No, it is not easy. Not easy at all.